Hey, Bloomburrow just come out, and I think... Bloomburrow just come out. Okay, here are the top 20 commons that I think are the top 20 commons from Bloomburrow just came out. First off, we got Dire Sight. It's a sorcery that you surveil 2, then draw 2, and lose 2. I'd say this is pretty darn good for black decks. 2 and a black for a sorcery that draws you 2 cards and loses 2 is, I don't know, that's fairly good. And then surveilling 2 on top of that, that can really bolster some of those graveyard type decks, maybe even some dredge type stuff. So I don't know, this is pretty cool. Plus there's a frog in it, so that always makes it a bonus. Then we've got Ravine Raider. It's a 1-mana 1/1 lizard rogue that has menace, so that's already pretty cool in and of itself. And it has the almost black fire breathing, which I think is pretty cool. It's like the shade +1/+1 fire breathing ability. And I don't know, just on a common and for 2 mana, I don't think that's too terribly bad. This thing did work at the pre-release, and I really appreciate it. Then it's Starlight Soothsayer. Yes, these are all just in order of color. I'm not even shuffling these. But it's a Bat Cleric, and it says at the beginning of your end step, if you gained or lost life this turn, you surveil 1. So this will constantly keep you ahead. I'm thinking of you, Jason, with your Rowan deck and losing life. So this will just constantly, every turn, you'll be able to surveil 1, which again can keep you ahead. All right, now there's Agate Assault. I don't know if anybody noticed this. You probably did, but it's basically an extra mana for a slightly upgraded Abrade, because Abrade says it deals 3 damage to something and it destroys an artifact. This will do 4 damage to something, exile it, or exile a creature. So for its sorcery speed, it's 1 more mana Abrade. I don't know, I think this is actually pretty darn cool, especially in Commander. People still play Abrade in Commander, and it's fantastic. So why not this? Why not this? Conduct Electricity. We got Ral as an otter. Deals 6 damage to a target creature and 2 damage to up to 1 target creature token. I don't know. I saw this. I mean, for 5 mana, you're like, yeah, whatever. But when you think about it, this is actually 8 damage for 5 mana, which is probably pretty far above the curve for the commons, especially. So you 6 damage to a creature, which is awesome. Most things that cost this much only do 5 damage, and then you do 2 additional damage to a creature token. And in Bloomburrow it was great because there's a lot of those creature tokens with the offspring effect, but just in general that can be really cool, especially in Commander. Higher above the curve on damage and the extra damage to something else. Kindle Spark Duo, Lizard Otter. You can tap it to deal 1 damage to target opponent. That's pretty cool, but whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you untap it. So this will go crazy in the Cheerios type deck, or just a Spellslinger type deck. Even in Commander, right? That's gonna be tap, cast, tap, cast, tap, cast, and you could do that multiple times. And I don't know, maybe even with cascading, that could be cool. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. All right, Roughshod Duo. Trample. Whenever you expend 4, target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. Every time you spend 4 mana on your turn, you'll give something trample. That's, I don't know. As a budget kind of a thing, I think that is a pretty cool effect. I mean, you got like not in Garruk's Wake, oh my heck, the Garruk thing that just gives all your creatures trample all the time. That's pretty cool, but sometimes you don't have that kind of thing, and this just gives you an extra little, I don't know, a little bonus, I think, that you can trigger fairly easily in certain games. Plus it gives it a small bonus in the +1/+1, so I don't know, I just think that's kind of fun. Cash Grab, everybody loves this card. Mill 4, and then you can put a permanent card from among those cards into your hand. And if you control a squirrel or return a squirrel to your hand, you create a food. That's pretty cool. Plus, it gives you a bonus if you're running squirrels, and everybody likes the squirrels. So yeah, I think it's pretty fun. All right, I think this is probably one of the best cards, at least best common cards in this set. Heaped Harvest. When Heaped Harvest enters and when you sacrifice it, you may search your library for basic land onto the battlefield tapped. It is an artifact. So you got artifact synergies. I mean, for all the green artifact synergies that you need. But for 3 mana, you're getting a basic into play tapped. And then you can pay an extra 2 to gain 3 life, as well as get another land. So that's 5 mana for 2 lands, but it just says when you sacrifice it, so you don't necessarily have to pay that 2, I believe. You can just sacrifice it to something else, I suppose. I don't know how that works, but I just think it's awesome that you can get 2 lands from this little heap of food. I think that's pretty awesome. A Polywallop. This was my favorite card in the set, I think. Oh man, I love it. Come on, this frog is punching the crap out of this hominid looking thing. Come on. It doesn't get much better than that. It's amazing. And it's a Polywog, and it's polywalloping somebody. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, it costs 1 less for each frog you control, so this could potentially be 1 mana. And target creature you control deals twice its power to target creature you don't control. This is a fantastic double the smackage and on your cards. All I'm saying is I'm gonna have to build a frog deck. All right, I love the frogs. And speaking of frogs, we got a frog rabbit Intriguard duo. When it enters until end of turn, target creature you control gets vigilance and +X+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. This will go crazy with those token decks. And a creature that gets really tall just all of a sudden can be very scary. Maybe in a Voltron type deck, or like I said, in those token decks you could have 12 tokens or what have you, and then something's all of a sudden vigilance +12/+12. That can get very out of hand very fast. I used this in the pre-release. It was pretty awesome. I mean, I only have 4 creatures, but in a pre-release with an extra +4/+4 on a creature, that's pretty terrifying. But anywho, pretty dope. All right, this is actually a reprint. We've got Banishing Light, which when it enters you exile target non-permanent and opponent controls until it leaves. Come on, this thing has always been printed as an uncommon or higher, so putting this in Pauper is bonkers. I think it's pretty awesome. I don't know, maybe it was legal in Pauper before. I was looking at all the prints and it was always an uncommon, so I think this is the first time it's been introduced to Pauper. That's just amazing. I feel like I'm going to see this one a lot. Cindering Cutthroat. This is a lizard assassin. It's a 3/2. When it enters, it can enter with a +1/+1 counter on it if an opponent lost life this turn, which is pretty cool. So the 4/3 for 3 mana and a common. That's not bad. Plus, you can give it menace until end of turn if you need. So this will just make it. I don't know. I think this is just kind of a neat creature. Maybe it's not that powerful, but I don't know. In smaller formats like Pauper, I think this could be pretty fun. Plus the color scheme is just fantastic. Come on, let's be honest. Corpseberry Cultivator. This one's a big chunky squirrel, and I love him. So cool. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may forage. So you can exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food. And whenever you forage, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. So if you are in a food deck or something, or you've got a bunch of forage type stuffs, yeah, this just gets bigger every turn because at the beginning of combat, you can do that and sacrifice a food, make it chunkier, and go from there. Mind Drill Assailant. This one I thought was pretty cool. I took a hard look at this to see what the heck was going on, but if you got Threshold, so 7 or more cards in your graveyard, it gets +3/+0. So for 4 mana, you're getting a 5/5 in common, so that's already above curve. Plus, you pay 2 and a Dimir to surveil 1, and you don't have to tap it for that. So you can pay that like as much as you can with the amount of mana you have. Plus, this is in blue, so you could be running an effect that reduces that cost, and then you can surveil a whole bunch during a turn. We've just talked about surveilling before, but you get it. Pond Prophet, Simic Frog Advisor. When it enters, draw a card. That might not seem like the coolest effect, but just drawing a card on a creature with 2 mana is always pretty fun. Plus this brings it into, I don't know, Simic colors that have never ever had anything like this at all ever. But it's a frog. Come on. Again, I'm gonna have to build that frog deck because I love the frogs, and just having an extra thing that draws cards upon entry it's just fun, and I like it. Tempest Angler. This one was brutal in the pre-release. It was just 3 mana, and then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Tempest Angler. That was pretty cool. That's already The three mana +1/+1 counter type cards, like the weirds from Ravnica. Holy crap, these things can go crazy. Especially, yeah, like I said, in those Cheerio type decks or, you know, what have you. This thing's just gonna get bigger 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times a turn, and you're just gonna have this big old otter wizard. So that's pretty cool. Bumbleflower's Sharepot. Well, Bumbleflower's Sharepot enters and you create a food, and that's for 2 mana. And then you can pay 5 and sacrifice it to destroy an online permanent. Activate as a sorcery. So this is already on curve with similar spells like Meteor Golem. So 7 mana, you can destroy an online permanent, and it makes you a food as well. So you know, if you're running, you know, those Pauper Commander decks or artifact type decks, colorless. I don't know, colorless has a whole bunch of stuff now, but if you've got a budget colorless deck, this is actually quite cool. Speaking of colorless decks, Fountainport Bell. 1 mana artifact that searches for basic onto the top of your library, which probably isn't too good. I mean, honestly, it's pretty bad. But you can pay an extra 1 to sacrifice it to draw a card. So you don't have to search for that basic land. So at the end of the day, this is basically 2 mana, draw a card in colorless. So this will fit in anything. But if you want, you can shuffle your library, find a basic, and then draw that all in the same turn. So if you're lacking on lands in white or black or red decks, that'll, I don't know, it's hard to describe how much I like this card. 2 mana, draw card at the end of the day is really good for colorless, and I think this needs to see more play. I mean, it just came out, but it'd be cool. All right, last one is Hidden Grotto. I'm pretty sure I used some sort of grotto in one of the other videos. But when it enters, you surveil 1. So there's a bunch of grottos. All right, there's Crystal Grotto, which scries 1. And then there's Shimmering Grotto, which does nothing. And then there's another grotto. What is it? It's the one that you tap for. Oh, there it is, Captivating Cave. So it's not a grotto, but so all of these are basically the same, but they just have different abilities. But this one, again, surveilling is, I think it's technically better than scrying, personally. But you know, you can filter any color, and when it enters, you surveil 1. More graveyard type stuff. I love the surveilling. I think it was a great addition to the game. Anywho, these are my top 20 cards from the set that are commons, and let me know what you think. What were your favorite commons, or what were your favorite cards from the pre-release event? And make sure you check out that TCGplayer affiliate link down below so you can purchase the common cards seen here, and visit that Milkman Proxies link as well. There's an affiliate link and such. The Milkman's great. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure you check me out next week. That sounds weird. Make sure you join me next week, there you go, for your weekly dose of magic.